us today. Just some quick housekeeping. If your cell phone is with you today, please put it on Do Not Disturb or on silent so that we can all be able to hear our wonderful speaker today. So I'll get started. So Camille and Devin Abdelnabi, both farmers and proud owners of Long Lane Farm in Warren, Rhode Island, began their journey as a married couple before transitioning into a farming partnership. Camille embarked on her farming career in 2013 at Little River Farm, where she managed operations until 2022. After years of supporting Camille's farming aspirations, Devin made the decision to leave her office job and join her as a farmer in 2021, following the acquisition of their dream property and farmhouse in Warren in 2020. Established in 2023, Long Lane Farm was created with the vision of sustaining a family while providing abundant produce to the local community. Camille and Devin are dedicated to offering fresh, beautiful produce that inspires delicious home-cooked meals. We hope you find their journey as motivating as we do as they work towards realizing their dream. So it is my pleasure to introduce Camille and Devin Abdelnabi of Long Lane Farm, and most importantly, their daughter, Naya.
All right, can you hear me for that with the microphone? Perfect, and everybody else can hear me? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for having us here today, and thanks to Jen and Jane for thinking of us to ask us to come. So I'm Camille, and then my wife Devin, and baby Naya. She'll be 12 weeks on Thursday. Yep. So she's gonna sleep through this, it appears, but that's probably best case scenario. So yeah, today it will be a little bit of a mix. I'll mostly be talking about kind of how we built up our farm and got where we are today. And we'll talk a little bit about our growing techniques throughout. So at the end, I'll leave a little time for questions and can really ask anything that you think of at that time. So how many people here have been to our farm in Warren? Okay. That's actually a lot, which I thought might be the case. So for anyone who hasn't, it's about a 10-minute drive away from here, heading down Long Lane, right on the way to Tuisset. If you're ever driving there, we have 4 big hoop houses. They're pretty much as big as you could have built them. We have a little pull-off farm stand, and then our little farmhouse is there as well. So we grow about 2 acres of certified organic vegetables. They're about half are inside of the tunnels, the hoop houses, and then half is outdoors, more or less. And in the past, we've done a lot more intense winter growing where we were going year-round, but now we're moving a little bit more towards Easter through Thanksgiving harvest schedule, just to give ourselves a little more work-life balance. And now that we've welcomed Naya into the family, to be able to be there more for her, because once the summer starts, it's quite a marathon. Once the plants are ready for harvest, there's really no stop. So now we're thinking maybe the winter we want it to be a little more family time and low key. For our revenue sources, we mostly sell through our farm stand that's right on the property. We just do an honor system, and that's worked out really well. We have a 90-member CSA that usually runs from about the end of May through, this year we'll go through Thanksgiving. And then what we're really trying to increase every single year is our certified organic plant sale, which we do usually around Mother's Day. And this year we'll go into June with it. And we're selling mostly herbs, vegetable plants, and some flowers, mostly edible ones, and kind of staying in that range. I don't really know. You all probably know so much more about ornamental flowers and how to make your gardens look pretty. I'm a little bit more the practical, what can you grow and eat kind of person. So most people do want to know, how I got into farming, how we got into farming. And I came out of college. I did not study farming at all. I was an American Studies major. I thought I might want to go be a professor. You know, I grew up in the suburbs outside of Buffalo, New York, with 2 doctors for parents. Like, if you would have asked me in middle school or anyone, oh, is this person going to become a farmer? The answer probably would have been a definite no. But I started to get into, you know, where our food source, where everything was coming from in college, and it really fascinated me that we needed an organic food movement at all. You know, shouldn't all the food that we're eating be clean? Why is it now the point that to know that it's clean, we have to put a label on it? So I got into more like the theoretical side, but whenever I was reading these books, I was always really interested in the farmer's life, that they got to wake up every day, just go outside to work, ate from their land. So I kept trying to get farm jobs. It just didn't work out for various reasons. So I got a job at the University of Rhode Island right after college in 2012, just a little temporary job, and then I was going to go move to Argentina and, you know, have a fancy life down there. So those are my dreams, and I got the job at Rhode Island, and one day I was in a little coffee shop with my roommate, and I was cooking vegetables in the house a lot. So she said, hey, you like vegetables, maybe you want to work on this farm, not really knowing at all that I had wanted to work on a farm. So it was for an apprenticeship at a farm down in Wakefield, Rhode Island. So I reached out to them. I ended up getting the apprenticeship, and I was going to live on their land in a trailer and be their apprentice for 6 months, which meant I worked, you know, about 80 hours a week. I got about $900, and I lived in a trailer with a rotting floor. But I didn't even care, because the first day that I went out there to work, I just knew it was what I was meant to be doing. And all I wanted to do was learn as much as I could. And I was pretty committed to going down the path of owning a farm. I didn't plan that I was going to do it with only 6 months of farming knowledge. But while I was working there, I met somebody else, and we decided, hey, let's just start a farm together. You know, how hard can it really be? And, you know, I was 23, which I'm glad that it happened then, because I was willing to do things then that I would just never do now. So we found a little piece of rented land down in Exeter, right on the Queens River, really nice soil, and it was through one of my business partner's friends, you know, family friend. And there was nothing on this land, so we had to put everything in. So the first thing we put in was this kind of wooden greenhouse that we built with lumber that had fallen on his parents' land, and we bent all the arches ourselves, and we put it up. Of course, it wasn't ready by the time we needed to start seeds in it, so we decided we were going to build this little greenhouse in a greenhouse. And we put a wood stove in there, and that's how we heated it, and we had to wake up every 2 hours to put wood in it. So we were sleeping on the floor with my dog at the time, and I still had my job at the University of Rhode Island, so I'd wake up at like 6:30 a.m., go to the freezing river to pump water up, to water in the greenhouse. I'd drive to URI, I'd go in the bathroom, kind of clean myself up, and go to the office job for the day. So it was a lot of sacrifice in the beginning. We really were bootstrapping it. We didn't have much money, but we knew we wanted to be growing food, so we were willing to do whatever it took to make it happen. So we're skipping ahead here to 2019, because that's the year we really transitioned to no-till farming. Before that, we were starting to see a lot of issues. We were trying to use a tractor to prepare the fields, but we were having some pest issues, weed issues, and so we heard a podcast about these farms that were going to a no-till farming method, which mostly meant putting very large amounts of compost down on the soil and planting right into it. So the idea is, you know, you put like 2 inches down before planting, you plant everything into it. So we switched to this model, and we started to see amazing results in terms of the veggies that we were producing, reduction in pests, the quality of the vegetables. So we fully went to this method, no more tractor. no more tilling the land. And we really went from growing, we doubled our size too of what we were able to grow. And you think, okay, a tractor, that's how I'm gonna be the most efficient. And in some ways you are, but also once you can have a more hand labor touch on it, you actually can plant in tighter spaces. You can make sure that everything you're planting is going to succeed. So we were full into this method. We went fully into it. Year 7 was 2020, which was a crazy year, obviously, in so many ways. We really saw an increase in people wanting to buy local food because of the pandemic. And that year we got married, and then we were looking online in August, and we saw this property come up on an agricultural land website. And we saw it, and I said, that's my dream farm. I had always told Dev since we met, you know, I wanted to be able to sell right from my farm, have my nice little farmhouse right there, and our hopes were that it wasn't going to be too far away from people. So we saw this little spot in Warren, and we said, you know, we had to have that. So we met with the family. The property was in a farm since 1930 in the same family. It was the granddaughter was selling it who hadn't lived there for a while. So we were at that time competing with a lot of not only developers, but also just people who wanted to turn it into like a brewery because it was zoned for 2 lots. But they wanted to hopefully keep it in a farm, but they also were going to go with the highest bidder. They needed to move things along. So I didn't quite know what to do at the time. We didn't have the funds. So I wrote them a heartfelt letter to just say, hey, you remember growing up here on this farm. We want to be able to raise our family there. So it did buy us more time, 2 more days. And luckily in that time, my family was able to step in and allow us to purchase the land, which I understand, you know, is a privilege that a lot of people don't have who are trying to get into farming. And if you ask most young farmers in the area, they will say that land access and being able to purchase their own land is the #1 issue. So we had a lot of different things come together to allow us to get this property, and we're so thankful for that. And we kind of feel like it was fate, like we were meant to be on this property, and it was meant to have us. That's the little farm stand that came with it, and the family before us, we never met the original farmers, but we're told that until she was 80 years old, she was out in the farm stand selling raspberries and corn pretty much. I think we finally have gotten it through to the community around us that we're not going to grow the corn just because on 2 acres it's just not financially viable, and also to do it organically. So around 2020, also Dev was still working her office job, and I kind of started to nudge her to come work for the farm to be able to one day have our family be totally based there at the farm was our goal once we knew we wanted to have a child as well. So I talked her into becoming our delivery driver first, which slowly moved into being our nursery seater / everything. And she came on, and no questions asked, and it's been great to be all together at the farm. So when we bought the farm in 2020 in Warren, I was still in the partnership with my business partner. His name was Bob, and we had this grand idea that we were going to run the 2 properties and keep them both and somehow be able to do that. So this was the Exeter property, a gorgeous property, you know, nestled right against the river. The main thing with this property was it was down in like a valley, and all those trees on the side, it would get winter there, and it was just so cold. The sun would go down at 11 a.m. So now being in Warren, I'm just like, sometimes we're like, there's too much sun here, like go away. But it's amazing to see just in the same state how many different little growing climates you have and microclimates, and just how important it is to learn the property that you're on through observation and being there and seeing how different things go. So we ran both properties for a couple years. I was commuting between both of them. We were building up the Warren farm. So even though it had been farmed before us, it was more hobby farming. So there was no agricultural well, there was no deer fence, there was nowhere to start seeds. So we really had to start all of this stuff and build it all up again. So the first thing we put in was those 2 hoop houses, and then we opened up the farm stand as soon as we could to be able to provide food to the community around us. At that time, we were still running a delivery business where we were delivering food directly to people's doors. They could order online. We started this because of the pandemic, and it was great, but it meant, she was driving 12-hour days to do all the deliveries. I was driving between both the properties, and I just remember a day that fall, once it got to 2022, where I told her, it's like, I can't keep up this level of exhaustion and stress, and if I have to be under this amount of stress all the time, it's not worth staying and farming. And I really didn't know what to do at that time. We were discussing maybe I'd take a sabbatical. I honestly was like, I think I might take a sabbatical and just go work on other people's farms. I'm like, that sounds really nice to be able to farm and not have to, think about all the decisions day in and day out. But ultimately what we decided was best was I approached my business partner, Bob, to ask if he'd be willing to separate into 2 businesses, because his life was much more down in Exeter. We were establishing our life more in Warren. And luckily he said yes, so we decided to turn into 2 businesses, and that's when Long Lane Farm became what it is today. Before it was Little River Farm. So we kind of felt like, okay, we're totally starting fresh here. What do we want this to be? And we knew the first thing we had to do was get all of our infrastructures done, projects done. So we started full force ahead. We put in a new well. We got through an NRCS grant, so that was good. We definitely try to take advantage of grants and as much as we can. We had to dig all of our water lines so they were frost-free. We put up a deer fence. We put up more greenhouses. We had to upgrade all the electricity. We put in solar panels, and we also put in a cement pad for the wash station. So almost all of these projects we do by ourselves with the help of friends, so they can take a while, and also you're kind of learning some things on the fly. Like, I can tell you, don't dig water lines in March ever. This was the year that we had 20 inches of rain in March. So we dug the water lines on a nice sunny day, and then next day they were full to the top, and we were not able to get them properly dug in for a really long time. So these are things you learn as you go. And in my ideal world, I would have been able to have this property, just build it up for 2 years, not have to farm it and make a profit off of it, but that's not how it works in the real world. So we were simultaneously juggling, growing all the food, making our livelihood that way while trying to upgrade the farm and do all of these projects. This is our main thing that we just got done in this past year was our new wash station, which, if you know Susie, this is where she spends a lot of her time at our farm. And the reason we're putting so much work into these infrastructure projects is we know that that's going to give us the most success long term, and it's also going to give us the most ability to hand off work to other people, because we're at the stage where I'm viewing my role on the farm not so much as the day-to-day laborer, but more as the systems builder, the trainer, the mentor, the leader, and I also view myself as kind of building up the brand of our farm. So as we're trying to switch our roles to be more like that, I'm only 35, almost 36, but since I've been doing it 13, 14 years, and then also just looking to the long term of, how are we going to be able to have this farm when we're 50 and still have it work? How we know we need to empower people to be able to do most of the tasks. So we view if you have a really nice space for people to work, if everything works really well, if it's organized, that's going to be a lot easier to teach other people and hand things off. So we've really been focusing on that. I'll say the other biggest change I made this year was starting to transition our growing practice from a full no-till to something more of a low-till practices that really emphasizes cover crops. Are you guys all familiar with cover crops to a certain extent? Okay. So I'm pretty convinced that growing cover crops is one of the #1 ways that we can all, as farmers, gardeners, just kind of close the loop. And there's a new book by Elliot Coleman called The Self-Fed Farm and Garden, and he just came out with it. And this whole summer, I was just really trying to figure out what direction I wanted to go with the farm. And I read his book, and it was like he was telling my thoughts to me. And the two main things are making your own compost on the farm. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I look to switching away from no-till, because access to good compost is a real problem in this state, in Rhode Island, as well as other natural mulching ingredients. We can't really get good organic straw that we know is seed-free. It's hard to get a quality compost. So I was noticing after years of buying in compost that came from the Johnston Recovery Center, even though it was certified organic, I was noticing some real nutrient imbalances off in our fields and our tunnels, as well as there's microplastics in it, which isn't very nice. So it kind of dawned on me that maybe this no-till method that relies so much on compost coming in large amounts was maybe not the best thing for our area and our farm. So if a bed looks great and we can plant right into it, we do. But now I'm looking more towards cover cropping. So always having something on the land. It holds the soil together. It also the things that it does below the soil to attract biology and the fungi underneath the soil is pretty amazing, as well as feeding the pollinators above the soil, and you're creating your own nitrogen carbon sources right there in the bed. So this is an example of one of them in that picture. So for example, this is like a rye and a pea that was grown over the winter. So right now in the winter, it would only be about this high, but the spring comes and it just takes off. So this would have been about mid-May. I just go over and mow the cover crop, and then a lot of times what we'll do, depending on the crop that's going in, is we'll just tarp. We'll use a big silage tarp, and depending on the time of year, if it's really hot, it only has to be over the beds for about a week to really kill just that green on top of the rye so it doesn't regrow. And then what we did is we'll dig a hole down the middle where we need to plant a bigger plant. So this went into watermelons. And the results from this were amazing. We had no weeds in this field. We had amazing watermelons. I had no pests. So the more and more I'm seeing the results of it, the more I'm going towards this. We do a lot of baby greens. It's one of the things that we are known for the most. So this amount of debris on the bed is very problematic when you're going to seed an arugula or a lettuce or something like that. So with that's when I'll do a small amount of tillage to just be able to incorporate what's on top of the bed. It goes into the soil. All the worms and biology under the soil can eat it, and then we'll be able to seed the crop right into it. So, going more towards that method. And we will still put compost down, but now we are making our own compost. I think Jill is here from the Barrington Farm School. She helped us get it set up. With someone else named Megan, who was willing to kind of take on the whole project for me. And so we were able to make, I would say, somewhere around 20 yards so far, and we got it tested, and it looks really good. So that was a really big, something I've wanted to do for a long time that we were finally able to do. So that's now my philosophy. How can we grow more of our fertilizer, more of our nutrients, right here on the farm? And it's something that is kind of revolutionary. It's not when you think about it, but a lot of times right now, the general kind of way that people will teach you to farm is to really look from like a chemical farming, not spraying chemicals, but more chemistry. Where's the nitrogen? Where's the potassium? You know, where's the phosphorus? Let's buy this fertilizer in that's going to fix all that. And I'm starting to believe if you can cover crop, give your soil a rest, have a wide array of cover crops, that's an important thing too. There's grasses, there's legumes. You can really feed your own soil. So I could talk forever about cover crops, so I'm going to keep going and talk about more fun things after that. Oh, I think it was. So obviously now we have a little bit of a different situation, welcoming our daughter into the world, and our goal from the start has been to just create a really great place for the community to come, for our employees to be, for our family to be, to just be a gathering place for the community. So that's what we're really looking towards now, and we really feel like Warren, you know, we love living on the East Bay. I had only been to Warren one time before we went and looked at the house, so it's not like I knew much about the East Bay, and every day Dev and I are just like, how did this end up for us? Like, we're so lucky to get to farm where we are, and one of the things I like the most about, you know, being a business owner in a small community like this is just how many people I'm able to meet and how quickly we were able to assimilate into the community. So we're just trying to be more of a community gathering place, as well as establish more of a work-life balance, which I talked a little bit about, being able to hand more things off to the community as well as our employees. I just always like, you know, we hear a lot about how hard it is, you know, to be a farmer, and it is really, really hard. I will say that. It's kind of you have to be a little crazy to decide to do this job where you work a lot, and unfortunately you don't get paid a lot. So just to go into the details of what it is, it's, like I've said, really hard to maintain a work-life balance when you're there in the summer and those plants need you. It's really hard to leave them, especially if you don't have people that you can trust, but other people have lives too. So, you know, going away, sometimes we have to give up things, but we're trying not to. You know, we don't have a 401k, we don't have a pension, we don't get health insurance for free, anything like that. So those are the things that when I think about what do we give up being a farmer, it's things like that, to know that, okay, when I reach a certain age, I'm going to have this nest egg that I'm going to be able to retire on. So just being aware of that, and Dev and I are, and we're trying to do everything that we can, but it is a hard part, you know, of being a farmer. Just, like I said, low pay for a lot of work. As I said, the land in New England is very expensive, and it's very hard for young people to be able to, we'll have businesses on rented land, but to be able to make it a permanent thing, because buying your property is everything. I can tell you, when we were renting, you really question, should I do this project? Because you don't know how long you're going to be there. And we fortunately had a really good lease situation down in Exeter, where he was pretty much willing to let us be there forever, but not everybody gets that either, and they can be kicked off, you know, of the land in a moment's notice. And then just commuting as a farmer is really difficult. Even though I only lived 15 minutes away from the rented land, you know, sometimes you just have to go there to water, to uncover the plants. So being, you know, working where you live is really essential to well-being in life. Definitely finding labor can be difficult. I think we've kind of zoned in on what works best for our farm, which we just have a lot of part-time people work for us. It's like a second job, or they're just trying to get into farming. We've definitely found having someone like in a full-time role, 40 hours a week is a lot for somebody to ask of them. It's a really intense job. So that's the labor model that we've gone to at this point. We don't do apprentices. I don't know, it's something that's really appealing, but we don't have anywhere for people to live. So we always try to train as much as we can, but we don't have a set apprentice model as we go. One of the other main challenges is just all the different hats you have to wear. I've had to learn, how to do bookkeeping, how to make irrigation lines, how to fix a tractor. So you just constantly are learning more skills, which I'll also say in the next slide is one of the biggest benefits. Like it really teaches you to just constantly be learning. You always have to be evolving as a farmer, as a business owner, so that has also been a really fun thing about it. The main benefits, I'd say, of being an organic farmer, we get to have, it was the one career that I really saw that I could only have a positive benefit on my community. I didn't see a drawback. I'd say the biggest drawback is like the stress it can put on you as an individual, but I know that I'm putting a product out into the world that is only doing good, and that was something that was very important to me, as well as having a strong environmental benefit. We get to be outside all day, which is obviously coming in contact with beauty. I get to be my own boss, and that obviously you have to make sure things get done, but also I feel very lucky, especially now that we've welcomed a daughter, that we have pretty much complete autonomy over our time. So if we say, all right, 2 years ago our friends had a wedding in Italy, sure, let's go. We don't have to ask anyone for permission. We just got to make sure everything, can get done, which is its whole other side of it. We get to eat the best food all the time, not only from our farm, but also from all the friends we have who are farmers and the barter system that we have with them. And that was my biggest passion and biggest motivation for becoming a farmer, is I wanted to be able to have the best food all the time, and growing it myself was the best way to make that happen. We get to bring our dog to work every day. There's cats everywhere, as Susie can attest to. So it's a really fun place to work. So yeah, that's kind of just our story, and that's our main dates for the season. If anyone was looking to when we were opening or anything like that, and when the tomatoes start coming in, because that is definitely our what we specialize in. It's my favorite. You don't have to ask me what my favorite thing to grow is, because it's 100% tomatoes. If I had to only choose one, it would be those. Just I feel like it's what people wait the most to eat from a farm, and if I can be that person who, one, gives it to them first, because we can put it in the high tunnels, but also just give them the best tasting tomato, like I'm very happy about that. Yeah. Oh no, we do. Sure, tomatoes. Yeah.
Since this is being taped, if you could repeat for the recording.
Sure.
Each person's question.
Sure, no problem. Your question was, at the end of the season, do we have disease and blight on our tomatoes? And the answer is yes. As an organic farm, some farmers choose to do organic sprays on them. I don't want to do that. One, I just don't want to have to spray anything, but two, it's something you have to do in the evenings usually when I want to be inside and not outside. But my main method, the two main things on our organic farm, one is succession planting. So I have 3 different plantings of tomatoes going in at different dates, so I know, okay, I can say goodbye to that one when it's really started to go downhill. And what downhill means for me is going to be different than a garden. Like, I need to have a certain level of production to justify that plant still being in the bed, because that's what we'll look at. What is it making per row feet? So something like lettuce or arugula, we're making the most possible money off something like that. So you keep looking down the line, and tomatoes are really high up there, but they need to be producing. So that's one thing I do, have new plants coming in. We do a fair amount of pruning of leaves the whole entire season. So we'll keep pruning the bottom leaves up to the next ripening fruit cluster, as well as taking, the suckers off so we can just have, 2 main leaders. And also variety selection is really important for tomatoes as well. But I will say I only grow my tomatoes indoors. Growing them outside, they don't like being wet. So that's just, the disease will always set in, and it's just something you have to know is coming. But pruning the leaves, I would say once you start to see it, is probably the number one thing you can do in your garden. Yeah. Are there any other questions about really anything? Sure. Yeah. Sure. Okay, so the question is, how do you balance getting cover crops in your garden while also growing the food that you want to eat, what we would call on our farm a cash crop? So it is something that can be a really hard balance, and there's so many different cover crops that it's really finding the one that fits that time of year, the time that you have to get the cover crop in, and what your end goal with it is. So unfortunately, I do find on a garden, because you usually have a little bit more of like a May to October, usually something like rye is what you'll end up putting in, but rye is so hard to terminate. And on our farm, the thing with rye is it's an amazing thing because it will release kind of almost like poisons to weeds and bugs, bad bugs, but it also will do that to your crop if you don't give it enough time to break down. So you really have to respect the power of rye, is what I say, and it's amazing what it does, but I will not plant my fields that are in rye until June. So sometimes what your best bet is in a garden, putting some leaves over where you took the crop out, because you're usually coming late, and the problem is you can plant oats and peas until about mid-September, but if you plant them after that, you're just not getting enough growth to justify it, and that's why usually it ends up being rye. So one thing you could do is just cover it with leaves or straw over winter and pull it back and look to a spring cover crop of oats and peas, which will grow. But there's also summer ones. There's what I would recommend if anyone hasn't cover cropped, try buckwheat. It's a really quick, it's like 30 days from seeding, and it's a bit more of a watery stem, so it's actually really easy to terminate, and its window of planting is much longer. You can start around Memorial Day and go until September, and it flowers and the pollinators love it. You just want to be careful that it can go to seed really quickly. So that's like my number one. If you're a beginner, you want to try cover crops, try a little buckwheat, because you can get it in within 30 days from seeding to termination. And you could even just hand pull it and then use it as mulch. But there's so many different season crops. It's like I said, I could talk about it forever because it's kind of nuanced. So for most of our seeds for our cash crops, I like Johnny's seeds a lot in Maine. They're my favorite. Everything is tested really well. So almost all our seeds come from Johnny's. For cover crops, I'll get different ways. There's a place out of upstate New York, that I'll get like 50-pound bags. But Johnny's high mowing seeds, Fedco seeds is also good. They have organic cover crop seed if you're just looking for a smaller amount. The question was, do I ever use red clover? I use it a little bit. I use more crimson clover, which I'll put with my rye, because it will overwinter too, and it's nice to have like a legume as well. And I'll also use crimson clover. What the clovers are really nice for is an underseeding. So what we'll do is when we plant our fall broccoli, which usually goes in around July 4th, about 2 weeks after you plant it, you just go spread crimson clover seeds underneath the plants. It germinates really well in the shade. So then once your broccoli's done, or kale, or things that get tall, you can just take them out, and then you have the clover already growing in there. And you can walk on it, step on it. So I really like the clovers for that use. And they're not very hard to terminate, which is a nice thing. It's not super fibrous and dense, so it's a nice option as well. Were there any other questions about anything?
Clover, I can't even seem to get that out of my lawn. So you say you just, because I want to green lawn. Do you just put the plastic, you said the tarp over it so it bakes and kills
Yep.
it?
So the question was, how do we use tarps to kill crops and cover crops on our farm? Yes, they're silage tarps. We put right over it. Sometimes we'll mow it first, but you probably in a garden wouldn't have that much ability. The main thing is they don't work all year round. So it's really, May until end of August, early September, and probably in May it needs to be down longer because the temperatures aren't hot enough. Where in July, August, it can be down for a week and it will die. But yeah, it's really quick that time of year. So the tarp that we use for the tarping, it's a silage tarp. So we'll buy big sheets of it. You just want to look for anything. You don't want it to be permeable. So you're trying to keep the sunlight out and the water. And that's what's going to be able to keep it completely. It's like occultation. You can also use a clear plastic. I don't like that as much because I think it can kind of heat the soil, heat the life in the soil too much. So at least these tarps, it stays dark, and you'll pull it back, and there'll be worms everywhere. It's like a very gentle way to terminate things. Yeah, we can use it over and over and over again. Silage tarp. Silage. So it's what, dairy farmers would put. So we buy really big sheets. So I'm not sure quite what the best translation to a small sheet of plastic would be around here. Sure. So the question was, where do we send our compost testing? I found the Penn State lab. I ended up sending it to. I don't know. Do you have? Yeah. Yeah, it was good. It's really. They do a great job on their website explaining the different tests you could get. So it analyzed the nitrogen, pH, all those different things. So I can send you some copies if you want, or just if you wanted to see what the test came back of. I think it was 60 to 100 per test, depending on what knowledge you wanted from them. I think. Any advice on putting on a new well? We have a really high water table, so I didn't have to think that much about where to put it. One, don't wait until the last minute. That's my first advice, which we didn't, but once I finally was able to talk to a drilling company, I think we had to wait 9 months, which isn't forever, but if you need it right away. And the thing with putting in a well is I don't think anyone actually knows where the water is gonna come up. So we were lucky. We had to go down 175 feet, and we got 20 gallons per minute. But like I said, we have a really high water table, which is actually a bit of an issue. Down 4 feet, it's this hard glacial till. So when we were digging our water lines, we found, it just becomes really compact and things don't seem to drain down there. So I am having some issues on our greenhouses, it all runs off the side and then can kind of pool. Or when we have our spring plant sale and it decides to downpour and all the water comes into the greenhouse, and we have to be careful that people don't slip. So drainage is a big thing on my mind and at all times. Were there any other questions?
As an organic farmer, do you need to go through some level of regular inspections to be able to keep that label?
So the question was, as an organic farmer, what kind of inspections do we have to go through? Yes, so every single year we apply, and I just sent ours in. So the first step is you fill out basically with all your records of what seeds you use, where you purchase them from, what fertilizer. You send that in. It is a hefty fee. So for our size operation, we have to pay $2,500 a year to have it. So there used to be a program through the state of Rhode Island, DEM, that they were certifying us in Rhode Island, and that only cost $200. They did not have enough people to continue to run this program, so now we go to an outside certifier, and the most you can pay is $10,000. It's all based on your income. So we owe that every year. We fill out the application every year, and then someone will come and inspect our farm during the growing season. They've started to, it's not complicated, but you just really have to have all your records in place. There's, especially if you're a farm who's growing organically and conventionally, it's a very tedious process. We're not, so that makes it really easy, but they are coming onto our farm and they'll say, okay, tell me what you harvest, pick one crop, tell me when you harvested it, how much, where it was sold, show me the invoice, tell me when it was seeded, tell me when it was planted, in what bed. So you just have to be very detailed. I personally believe the onus should be on the farms who spray, the GMOs, and they pay the fee and everything. But, there's times where I'm like, do I want to continue down this because of the extra work and the fee? But I always come back to yes, just so we really can say, you can trust this, it's organic, we can say our plants were organic for our plant sale. So to me, it's worth it, but it is a little bit the policy obviously is all interconnected. So there is a bill, which it doesn't look like it's going to go through, but that I went to testify for last year to have like an agricultural receipts fund in Rhode Island, because right now any fees that they make off of farmers, which is about $3 million, just goes back into the general budget. So farmers are trying to get it that it goes back to farmers, because probably a program like what Rhode Island DEM was administering, where we only had to pay $200 for certification, would be able to go through. But it looks like, I've been told anything with budget and a receipts account doesn't look good in the so yeah, I've been trying to get a little bit more involved in the policy side. So for Rhode Island, I'm the policy advisor, and we just try to get support from farmers. So the biggest one we're trying to get passed right now, which has really good momentum, it's passed the House but not the Senate in the past 2 years, is a small and urban farm tax bill, because right now in Rhode Island you only get the tax exemption as a farm if you're over 5 acres. Our farm, we technically have 4.7 acres with our land, but if any of you are familiar with a place like Roots Farm in Tiverton, they're an acre or so that they're growing on, and we're not getting these exemptions, even though we all believe it should be based on your income, because so much about farming has changed, and a lot of us have adopted an intensive style that we can make enough money on a smaller space. So that looks like it could go through, and as farmers, and any little money saved obviously does help.
Following up on what you're saying, it's really makes me angry. It just seems like it's unreasonably onerous for you to do, because you have to spend so much money to give people what we should be having anyway.
Yeah.
I just think, it's just like you said, bleh, what can we do about this? Who should we?
I mean, I don't think there's much that you can do other than when you see it that organic food, especially local organic food, is more expensive. That is one of the many reasons, as well as all of our amendments, our potting soil. I buy a 2-yard bag of Vermont compost potting soil. It's $900. I'm going through, 9 of those a year. So it's just knowing that is why organic food is more expensive than regularly produced food.
Well, what about like contacting our representatives? Would that help? Is it past the house?
Yeah, definitely. Anytime you see any type of agricultural bill.
Benefits by making it so onerous to you? That's the question. It doesn't benefit you, it doesn't benefit us for it to be such an onerous process. It's going to put people out of business or make them not willing to even go into the business to begin with.
The question is, who does it benefit to have such an onerous and expensive organic certification process? At the end of the day, I'm not sure. I think probably like everything, it probably started in one way. It was this group of farmers who really saw, okay, we need to get a label and stand out. And that is another thing I will say that's happening right now. Like the big ag is kind of co-opting and taking like no-till and regenerative as their own thing. And it is a way for them to try to say, look, we're not bad, we're doing no-till, but their version of no-till is, it still involves chemicals. It goes through and you're killing a cover crop with chemicals and you're putting the seed directly into the debris, which is great. So like we're not tilling, but just to be aware sometimes when you do hear these terms out in the world of no-till and regenerative by a bigger ag corporation, it's because right here in Rhode Island, we have all these little farms. The way most other farmers, have to live and die in this country with their farms is very not sustainable. So I totally don't blame them that they're trying to do whatever they can. But when we look at, the agricultural model, for example, what's going on right now, a lot of farmers are about to lose their farm because, China can't buy the soybeans and all the tariffs, where in my mind it's, why aren't these farms growing food for people here in this country to eat? And of course, it's a very complicated answer as we go on.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I'll end it on a happier note than that, But thank you so much. And do you want to come up first? Just say hello. Woo! She had to leave for most of it, but
I can hear it in the hallway.
yeah. She is a good baby. We tell her, we're like, you got it made, girl. You get to be on the farm all day, and who are all these people?
So we thank you. I've never been to your farm. I will be there. Looking forward to it.
Sure.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, guys.